Captain Chaos here with some thoughts. Why are people so goddamn sensitive? I mean, wouldn't you rather actually be in control of your emotions instead of letting everyone else control you through your emotions? I mean, just imagine with me, if you will, being able to have anyone just shift, like just lose the sense of self, lose sight of all their goals, lose all sense of self-control, because someone else could say a word or do a thing, and just tweaking that emotion, just losing that emotional self-control, gave the other person all that power over you. Now you're feeling, not thinking. You're acting, not thinking. We're going to have some fun topics coming up here in the future. We've got School for Evil, lots of little projects. Dun dun. Just so you can get a little preview of the site for those of you who ain't seen it. Kevin's School for Evil. Learn to defend against and perform dark magic, psychology, sales, the occult, and manipulation of any kind. Shakal. And I even have a little blog here to get everybody started. Secrets, the power of speech. In the video, you're already in a cult. Now, what to do next? You guys can check that out. Just go to kevinsportal.com and click School for Evil from the bottom of the page. So yeah, what I don't understand is, as a smart person, as a person of value actually, in anybody's life, you're held to a high scrutiny. You're expected to display almost perfection. You're expected to display certain behaviors to curtail to the emotional needs of others, to the sensitivities of others, to the imperfection and brokenness of others, ultimately. You have to be just as broken to be able to do it. But it's exhausting. Dancing around words, however long or however short you might talk, to find just the right particular sequence that will bypass all of this person's post-traumatic stress, say, or anxiety and apprehension, trust issues, abandonment issues, father issues. All of these things need to be accounted for. And as smart as I am, I have to actually, knowing this stuff, think about all of these things every time I talk to somebody, because they do have, to not butter it up, delicate sensibilities. But how much better would it be if I could arm them with the wisdom of how to overcome each of those challenges with the self, whether it be codependency or what have you, to find that inner strength, to not need to, because what is insecurity really? When you lash out, something's wrong with you more so than the world. Someone else might have been okay in that situation. So when you lash out, it shows there's some subconscious baggage there, some background scar, something there where you feel the need to overexert, to over-display your power so suddenly, right? And hopefully gain a little bit more stability, a little more zen and balance. Life is what you make, and it can just as easily be joy. But people really like to argue, in a way. They like to take all of their pains, and because pain is painful, and the other person might not be in pain, they almost feel the need to overexpress it in all that they do, to share that pain so that they can be understood, right? This is like the core of all anger and everything, like if I have to feel this, you're going to feel this too. If I have to lose, you're going to lose too, you know what I mean? In the power of speech, we discuss a couple cool things on how to approach people in different scenarios. You can choose to see it as evil because you're the one in control. Or you can choose to just see it as intelligence. Whether you choose to play the game or not, the game of power, you're already playing. I mean, like, you can't opt out. So, wow, this is taking an interesting amount of time to load. As it continues to do so. So, I think curtailing to everybody's emotions, I mean, it should be unnecessary. And though I am willing to be patient and to make things take 10 times as long and to explain things or explain explanations and explain explanations, there is a point at which the listener should be responsible for their own actions. And I'm not the type of person to accuse or make anybody be right or wrong. Instead, it's really right or wrong for me, and I live my life accordingly. Therefore, with that understanding, when someone else is in my life, I hold them to the expectations that they're also responsible for them, and I'll do all that I can for them, provided that they're receptive and open. But ultimately, the choices, the actions, everything that you are is up to you. You can't enforce enlightenment. You can't enforce intelligence. I couldn't force a victory to all your problems if I wanted to, because they belong to you. They're your problems, and you have to make sure to keep those emotions in check above all else. Emotions, Robert Greene pointed out in 48 Laws of Power, emotions is the single biggest obstacle to power that there is. Everyone has them. They shouldn't be avoided, but they should be channeled and acted carefully, not acted upon so willy-nilly as people would. I mean, hey, go Vulcan, right? Did it load up yet? There we go. Powers of speech. The Fool card, my little art here where I mirrored it and colored it all red. Alright, so it goes into the power of suggestion and the arts of dress. I don't want to read you this whole article here. I just want to give you a little sample of some of the things to show you kind of how people operate, how vulnerable the mind is, really, how vulnerable perception is, even for the smartest of people. I may read the beginning of this, actually, having said that. The art of dress. It takes way too much mental effort for the average person to disregard the most basic skill of sight. It's one of the ways we learn since birth. To constantly assume everything you see is a lie would be exhausting. Knowing this, dress in such a manner to have the viewer make all the thoughts and assumptions you wish for them to see. All the while, people think they have free will, but really have no idea how many impressions are being placed upon them. The power of suggestion is phenomenal and segues perfectly to discussing the power of speech. A feeler is not in control. A feeler has heartstrings tugged by a skilled operator, or even unskilled, maybe. A television commercial of a starving African child in tattered garbs cradled by a caring figure. A television commercial showing injured dogs in distress, covered in flies. The feeler can donate to for a fraction of a difference in another's life. How interesting is that? Because they pulled you into the feelings, you can act more off of that impulse, that reaction instead of that carefully thought action on how all this happens. Like in charities, for example, I think you only have to donate, I think the maximum is 20% of what they make in charity. So like all these things, if you calculate everything in the world, works different than you think. But when you're feeling, you're not thinking. And that is in every little situation. See, so I'll be discussing neurolinguistic programming. We talk a little bit here about compliance tests. That's getting them to nod along. Interesting stuff is when you're talking to someone, the more that they nod along, the more that they agree, the more that they say yes, however benign the conversation. Did you like that movie? The more the mind thinks it's about to agree with whatever's going to happen next. And so far, it's like, yes, oh yeah, yeah. And then so it opens them up for suggestion to be easier, because the mind is already in this really acceptive state, pulling in thing after thing, and it assumes that the next thing is going to be just as agreeable as the former. See, this ultimately shows how vulnerable the human mind is. To a smoker, no smoking. No smoking. If you're a smoker, you hear smoking. No bypasses the mind altogether. They pretty much just hear whatever you said without no. This is why you hear expressions like biblical talk, like I am. You're supposed to speak everything as if it's already present tense. You can't use words like no. For example, I used to tell people, every time you see the color red, you will think of me. And then just for fun, I'd even explain it. Do you know why you'll think of me? Because you have to remember not to. Right? Say a red car pulled up. Your brain has to go, I don't want to think of Kevin. Don't think of Kevin. But what's that name popping up in that sense? Kevin. So no doesn't work. That's the hard part about trying to help people or be friendly to people that are in less of a mature position to handle things. Because you can't simply give people wisdom. You have to carefully structure and program it into them pretty much, because they all work at their own pace, they all have their own biases, their preferred language to be able to receive some information. Are they thinking or feeling? The first no you get, you shut down mind control capabilities by 30%. So continue to use what you know already. Honesty. Here's a fun part of this story here I've posted. When speaking to someone, remember the speed of your speech. Notice that they are riding your wave. If they wanted to ride theirs, they'd be somewhere else, or they'd be speaking themselves, right? They're sitting there absorbing your projection. This is your information. Notice that when you escalate and get excited, that they get faster and they get excited. Notice that when you slow down the drama, that they slow down, and how attentive that they are. Use this knowledge on whether you wish for them to consciously absorb or subconsciously render. Go in and out of speed several times, just one of many trance induction techniques, and the target will be faster and faster and easier to put under. Right? You want the subject to be entranced. You are the storyteller and must remember to lead as much as possible. So yeah, this could have been way deeper, but I'm going to be making a book actually, and several video projects. But this gives you just the tip of the iceberg for the sake of this topic I wanted to talk about, on how vulnerable people are. How, of course they have problems, of course they're difficult. They're programmed, and they basically have 1,000 stories. There's a yoga expression, we are the sum of the many stories we tell ourselves. But instead of us just telling ourselves stories, we've invented all of these interesting devices like TV. Drama films, horror films, there's violence and hate and aggression and all these different ideas everywhere. And there's love plastered every now and then just the same. And all of these stories, they aren't your stories, but they exist within you, constantly telling you in the background in your subconscious mind, constantly suggesting to your mind. And very rarely do we pray, meditate, affirm, whatever you want to call it, ourselves, our image, our ideas, our goals, and tell our story longer, like have more paperwork than all of the other stories that are being shuffled around. So everyone's in kind of a state of psychosis with oneself. They expose themselves to so many argumentative ideas within. This is why the Bible says, for example, a temple divided among itself cannot stand. They could just find some consistency. So hypnotists, mentalists, people in sales, they know this, that they can fragment the mind. People use words like gaslighting, but that's fucking nothing. Moving furniture around, just inch by inch in a room. For example, I could move this table, I could move that trash can, I could move the chair, and say nothing about it. No one really would consciously notice. But little by little they would start to question. They would feel weird at first, then I make a more dramatic change. But you act like it happened that way the whole time, right? Gets them to question their sanity. They can't even trust their own thoughts. The human mind is very vulnerable. So you need to have a strict discipline. School for evil. You need to have a little set of rules and conduct, little expressions here and there, little ways to put yourself back at the helm. And make sure you're the one steering your ship, not letting everyone else control your emotions, not letting everyone else control your actions. No matter how much you already think you're in control, you're going to be able to benefit from this information. There's going to be something in it that you didn't know, or something stronger that you could emphasize to be able to have control over yourself better. And if you have control over yourself better, if you want to, you have control over others better, because you now know how it's done and how it's always been secretly, whether taught or subconsciously, just because how humans interact, how it's always been done to you. See, like, here's an example of this. When arguing, say just enough to keep them emotional over mental. They will try to undercut you in similar strategies, but the skilled programmer knows not to operate on feelings, but thoughts and actions. Right here, this discuss how to bring people down from emotion. Okay, so man one, I'm furious. I lost my job. I'm furious. Oh my gosh, man. I'd be pretty mad too. Notice that. Furious. Mad. I'd be pretty mad too. Mad? Damn right I'm mad. Do you know how much I've put into this job? He just took that word, downgraded his status. Now he's mad. You know, man, I can understand you being agitated. You'll figure something out though, man. You've got this. You got the skills. You got the talent, man. They don't know what they're missing. Suck it, man. You know what, right? I got this shit. It's their loss. Man one was stepped down from furious to mad to agitated to just over it simply by mirroring and changing the word that the guy is identifying with while we're telling him back his own story until it became smaller and smaller and smaller and less significant. So yeah, that's just a preview of some of the kind of stuff we're going to go through. I made sure not to read the whole article so you can still have some fun stuff to read into it. But a lot of it supports what I wanted to talk about here, which was the sensitivities of us and how we can channel that wiser, how we can make better decisions. There is an art to programming oneself. Why do you think people do this, Moocher? Or Donald Trump does this? You know, why do you think that's the same position that we meditate like this for? We're going to discuss that and all kinds of things. To be simple, this is believed to be the finger of mind. Scientifically, you're pinching nerves. It gives you kind of a subconscious mental focal point when you're doing things. So symbolically, that's flicking away other people's thoughts, keeping his shit together, or meditating on the mind. And it's important to spend time with yourself if you're going to control yourself. People are like sponges. They're constantly absorbing their favorite programs. Ooh, television programs? Tune in. And you tune in like clockwork. Until now, where now you don't even have to wait 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because now you get it all on Hulu and Netflix and get the whole thing on demand so that you can bombard your mind even faster. So you got to tell yourself your own stories. We're going to have I don't want to call it a Bible. I don't really want to call it a cult, but we're going to have our own little tome coming out. It's in the works right now. We've got all the programs, and I started putting in the writing into it to kind of help you through this. People spend a lot of time, instead of focusing on themselves, focusing on everything on the outer world. You did this. I wouldn't have done this unless it was because you said that. It was because you did this. You lost control because someone else lost control. Well, have fun. Good for you. Look at all these excuses we make to not have to go through personal growth. That's good job. You know, so we shouldn't do that, though. At the end of every day, I blame me for everything, no matter what I said or if I even blamed you while we're talking. At the end of every day, I blame me. Now, that is not to say that the other person didn't make some errors, but I don't believe in good and evil. I believe in growth. Therefore, whatever they do on their own has ultimately little to do with me. At the end of the day, what did I do? What did I say? What didn't I do or say? How can I not meet this position again if something happened that was unpleasant for me? I actually cling to my anger on purpose. I cling to my sadness on purpose so that I can spend time with it and get to know it. I'm like, okay, I refuse to leave this. Let's pretend I'm sad. I refuse to leave this place until I learn how I got here. Because I know, as a human, as we all are, more or less, that I will be here again if I don't. I know that I will forgive again too quickly. I know that compassion will be there again. I know that I will willingly walk into problems unless I sit here and determine what the problem is and how I got to that problem. How can I eliminate that problem? what's worth what to me? How much does this cost me? And how much do I get out of this? Does this bless me? Is this a burden in my life? What can I do differently in my personal position within my limited capability as a person? My actions, my thoughts, my assets do to change how I ended up in this sadness or in this anger. Other people can be as wrong as they want, but you can cut people off out of your life, whether you choose to be codependent and pluck them right back in or not. Therefore, how much better to learn from going through it at all? Lest history be doomed to repeat, as they say. So I constantly hold myself as the ultimate, what do they say? We are our own worst critics. At the end of every day, at the end of every moment, if I can be that strong, I'm thinking, let's say heartbreak, or someone says a word that cuts your feelings and you feel your heart drop into your stomach. I'm thinking, okay, why? Right at that word, right at that concept, right at that offense. Why did I feel offended? Is it a valid offense? Is this person clever and crafty? Is it an imaginary slight? As they say among cancer signs, imagine slights. Is it just a feeling? Because people will exaggerate things or take things out of context. I immediately start to self-analyze. I still pay attention to what people say, but I think, how did I got here? Okay. And if it was unpleasant, what are we going to do next? So hopefully we can learn a lot of mature, responsible exercises here. Obviously, with the whole gimmick here, School for Evil, you could use this at its extreme form to manipulate and be greedy, but the ultimate point is to learn that how humans interact. It's not about really what's right or wrong versus what's effective. And if you know that this is really what happens, then on a subconscious level, when people get what they want, and even instinctually, they're kind of doing a lot of these arts. And we're going to talk about them, and you'll become more aware and therefore less vulnerable to someone else tweaking your radio station. Someone else tuning you instead of you tuning in and following through to what you want to be, where you want to go. Alright, so I'm going to wrap this video up. I just thought I'd get people excited. I'm also working on a trailer. It's going to be like a horror movie trailer coming. I kind of got distracted with so many other projects and things going on. But stay tuned. Kevin Chaos, kevinsportal.com.